Hi everyone, Amy here from Dayton Nursery in Norton, Ohio. But today's video is not about us. It is about another local business, the Seiberling Farm, that has been around since 1831. The Seiberling Farm is located at 4117 Greenwich Road in Norton. In the summer, you will find their farm market stand with their very famous sweet corn. They have tomatoes, melons, fruit, anything you could wish for, all locally grown. Now, the farming business can be kind of tough. Not only is it weather dependent, they definitely depend on rainfall, but they have something else they really depend on to get all those crops growing good, and that is the pollinators. Now, you may have heard of Norma, who is known as the chief flower grower over at Seiberling Farm. She has a brother named Curt, and every summer he's been bringing over some beehives to help with the pollination of their crops. And this year he brought over Russian bees, and I was able to interview him, and boy is he a wealth of knowledge. So I wanted to share that interview with you, and I'll see you when it's over.
Hi, I'm Curt Nice. I'm brother of Norma Nice, and our mom is a Seiberling, Maxine Seiberling, and this is Chuck Seiberling's farm. And I used to work here picking corn in the summertime, as well as my Uncle Junior Seiberling's farm. And I've retired now, and I keep bees just a little west of Cincinnati. And the past 5 years I've kept bees, and been asked to give a little summary of and answer questions on how we keep bees and about the 2 hives I bring up here every summer for the pollination. So what was the first question?
Well, we just saw your hives out back. So what's the significance of a Russian honeybee, and why did you select that type?
Okay, so I had a rough winter and lost hives this past winter, whereas I had good years before. But anyways, I had to buy some new packages of bees, and the Russian hybrids were one option, or they had Italians also. The Russians had good characteristics of making honey and being relatively gentle. Of course, I think it's hard to tell what you're going to get and how they're going to be. Generally, if I have a good hive that's gentle and good honey producing, I'll use them to make a split and make new queens from them. And then try to replace the queens that are in more aggressive hives. Yeah, it was just one of the options I had for the new packages. And actually, I got a package here. I can show you what they look like. So this is what a package of bees looks like. It's a new plastic container. They used to come in just a screened-in wooden structured box. These plastic ones are kind of nice. They put a little feeder jar in there, and then they got room for a couple queens in top. And then the queens can either come in a little cage like this with some candy in them and a couple nurse bees in with them, and then you can introduce these into your hive. 3 pounds of bees, you shake them in, and then put the queen in. There'll be candy in the front here also, so that they can get used to her scent, and over 3 days then she'll gradually get out of the cage and they'll be acclimated to her. Other types of queen cages I've got here I use occasionally for catching queens or swarms, putting them in. And then besides packages, you can also get bees in a nucleus container like this, which a nuke container is just 5 frames of more developed bees than packages. So if you're a new beekeeper, 1 package might not do it. They might abscond on you or leave on you, but if you get 2 nukes, you've got a better chance of keeping the bees. You have 1 to use to build up the other hive, and it's a more recommended method of starting out with bees is get two nucleus colonies. Then you can take those 5 frames into your normal hive box along with other frames and develop them from there and feed them.
So we're here on a very large farm. What kind of crops do the bees pollinate?
Oh, pretty much everything. I mean, potatoes, onions, squash, green beans, beets. Yeah, it's even the trees, apple trees, and the raspberries, blackberries. They're the most efficient pollinator that there is the honeybee. you'll see some bumblebees and maybe even like hummingbirds. They'll do some pollination, but the honeybee is hands down the best pollinator, and so it does a great job.
So the bees all the way in the back will travel all the way to the front of the property and, and do their work?
Yeah, they can go up to, well, 3 miles, maybe 5. They go quite a distance and still make it back. Well, sometimes they'll spend a night on a flower. You'll see some that can't quite make it home, so they'll spend a night out and then they'll come back the next day. But most of them come back.
So I assume being a beekeeper is not an easy job. What are some of the challenges of beekeeping?
Well, you need to try to keep your hives strong so that they can't get affected by the 3 main pests that there are. There's hive beetles and wax moths and varroa mites. Now, the hive beetles are pretty easy to take care of. As a matter of fact, let me show you that. I've got little strips of plastic. I should have had a sample in here, but I put a little vegetable oil in there, and they've got a little grid on top, and I put those in between the frames, and then the bees will actually corral the mite or the hive beetles into there, and the beetles will go down through the grate and into the vegetable oil and the mites. So that's how I control the mites, and it's been an easy process. I just keep them clean and filled with vegetable oil, and they do the job of cleaning up the hive beetles. Now the wax moths, the other problem is they can destroy a hive within a week, and I've had hives that have been wiped out by the wax moths, but the only time that they invade is when the hive gets weak to the point it can't defend it. And if you want to see some nasty videos on YouTube, go look at wax moths and beehives, and the larvae of the wax moths just work their way through the wax and destroy the hive. So I've had to burn some of those, and some of them they're in decent shape. I can freeze them overnight in the freezer at minus 20, but and that'll kill them. But the worst problem is the varroa mites. And the varroa mites have not always been around. I don't know how many years they've been here, but our father's beekeepers didn't have trouble like we do with varroa mites. There's also tracheal mites, but they're not as big a problem as the varroa mite. The varroa destructor can invade a hive and get on the bees and feed on the bees and weaken them. And we've got a procedure in place now that we use called a mite wash, that we keep track of how bad the infestation is of the mites. So we'll take a sample to do a mite check. We'll take a sample of about 300 bees. I've got a little sample jar here. You can make your own of these also, but there's a little line in here at 200 and 300 bees, which is about half a cup. So I'll get half a cup of bees in here and put them in here with either alcohol, or now what we're using is a Dawn Ultra 2% mixture, which is 2 tablespoons per gallon of Dawn Ultra dish soap. Put that in with the bees and let them set for a minute, and then shake it for a minute and swirl and shake for a minute, and then count how many bees you've got there. And 300 bees to be at 2% would be like 6 mites. If you count 6 mites in the bottom, anything over 6 mites you should treat for them. If you don't have 6 mites, then you're good for the day. But one method I've used in the past for treating is putting these Apivar strips in. They're expensive, and I'm thinking about switching actually, because there's lots of different options to use for treating them. And with these, another disadvantage is you have to take the honey supers off when you treat them. So other treatments, you don't need to take the honey supers off to treat them. And doing mite checks, probably I do them twice a year at least. And then in the fall time, when I'm getting bees ready for winter, I'll well, of course, I can go into the winter question. I think you had one about how to prepare bees for winter, and that's one of the things I do is treat them for mites with oxalic acid. It comes in a powder form, and I'll put it in I've got a burning iron that I can stick under the hive, and it vaporizes the oxalic acid, makes a vapor, and that will kill the mites in the hive. And the good thing about doing that at Thanksgiving time is that that's the time of year when the hive doesn't have any closed brood in it. So they've kicked all the drones out of the hive, and the brood is all open. So there's no mites that can hide inside a closed cell. So you're treating the whole hive that way, and right before winter time is a good time to get them too. So that's why we do it at Thanksgiving time. And that leads me into the winterizing thing, which is I treat for the mites, and then I reduce the entrances of the hives. I add insulation to the hives, mouse guard to the hives to keep mice out of the hive, and then also add a candy board to the top. This is a candy board which I made. I should also say a lot of other retired beekeepers in our club are retired carpenters or people that like to work with wood and hobbyists. So you can build these yourselves, some half-inch screen and wood, and then line this with newspaper, or I use a tissue paper from my other items. I ordered some tissue paper, and then in a 5-gallon bucket, mix up some sugar and spray in a little water and a trowel, and mix up that until it gets clumpy, and then you can trowel it in here smooth. So this will be filled with that, we call it candy board. So you let it set overnight and it'll solidify, and then you can put these on top of each hive, and they'll eat on that through the winter, and it'll help keep them. Also, if preferably give them enough honey, 5 pounds of honey. But if you can't do that, I always do this in addition to that.
So you talked about a lot of things you do to improve the overall health of the hive. Do you do anything to improve the overall life of the hive, of the bees?
Improve their life? No. I'm planning to use a little more insulation this year in the wintertime. For example, I'm using screened bottom boards, and I put insulation, inch thick foam on the tops and sides, but I just had the panel on the bottom. And so this next year I'm going to insulate the bottom better, and I'm going to put, in addition to the 1-inch foam, I'm going to wrap the sides with some other wrap insulation. So I'm going to try to keep them a little bit warmer, although they can survive pretty well, as I've seen in the past 3 or 4 winters before that they've made it through the winter.
So you brought 2 different hives out to the farm. What happens if 2 queen bees get in a fight and then they kill each other?
Well, they won't get into a fight, being is they've each got their own hive, their own box. But you could get 2 queens fighting if they decide to supersede. Their queen gets old, say after a couple of years or 3 years. The queen is old and not producing as much as she used to, so the workers will produce supersedure cells or swarm cells more down at the bottom of the frames. And then those queens, if they if they come out and emerge at the same time, they might have a fight and kill each other. But the bees they'll make another one, provided they have the resources and an egg that they can use to make a queen. Or another possibility is they could end up with a laying worker, which is a very complicated, bad situation to have a laying worker. It's much better to have a good queen hive. Anyways, yeah, it can happen. If they don't like a queen, they'll ball the queen and kill the queen. The workers will. So yeah, that's not good, but they can survive it.
Have you ever collected a swarm of wild bees?
Well, yes, but I don't like the term wild bees. I mean, most of the bees that you see, swarms that you find, are from hives of people that have gotten too big and they didn't have enough room or resources, and they made a queen and took most of the hive with them, or half the hive with them, and are looking for a new spot to go. So yeah, basically you can put a sheet down or a cardboard box down and cut the limb off and shake them into the box and get them back, find the queen, and set them up with some new resources in a new box. So yes, it's easy.
So in your opinion, what is the cause of the current pollinator decline?
I'm not really an expert on the pollination and decline or colony collapse disorder or any of those things. I would refer you to a great guy that I read from Randy Oliver at scientificbeekeeping.com. He does a great job of evaluating everything. As a matter of fact, he's the one that came up with a different method to use the Dawn dish soap, and he did trials of that with his college students. But the decline, I'm not an expert to say on that.
Well, Curt, you've been a wealth of knowledge today. Thank you so much for this interview. To finish up today, what do you think is the value of pollinators to us?
Oh, well, we've got a lot more food and better food because of them. Everything from our fruit trees to our vegetables and our berries gives us a lot more fully developed fruit because of the bees' good pollination characteristics.
Now, like I said, he is a wealth of information, and I'm so glad I was able to interview him. If you're interested in taking up the hobby of beekeeping as well, be sure to check out your local county's beekeeping association. They'll have tons of information to get you started. And I will also link the Seiberling Farms Facebook page below if you would like to follow them as well. And I again thank you very, very much for watching our video, and we'll see you soon.